You know, I'm going to give you a history lesson.
We got some dumbass motherfuckers floating around this country.
Stop laughing! And when I do, start.
Also, y'all did some nasty-ass jokes on my ass, too.
Funny jokes and unfunny jokes come out of the same birth.
You f***ing guys are unbelievable.
Why are you laughing?
Evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Why You Laughing, a history of comedy podcast. And today I'm pleased to introduce to you Rodney Dangerfield's No Respect album, his 1980 Grammy award-winning album, which is a little weird. This is only a 41-minute runtime on this, and I'm surprised it does not seem like the pretentious sort of Grammy award-winning, like sometimes good comedy albums get nominated, but I feel like it's very often the most pretentious option. We famously, with Danny Polishchuk, went over PDQ Bach winning 4 years in a row. So the quadfecta from Peter Schickele. So it's not always the best comedy album. So this was a strange one when I saw that No Respect won the Grammy, because it seems like sort of a comic album. We'll talk about the feel of it, but it just feels like a cool night at Dangerfield's in New York. Like it's just a very nightclub, old school 1980s feel. So it's nice that this also was recognized by the snobs, the critics. And we haven't revisited Rodney since we did. He was maybe our third or fourth episode. And then we have not talked about Rodney since. So I figured he was worth revisit. The tricky thing about this, I used to get nervous about doing albums or comedy specials that we just liked. That there was nothing weird about them. They were just good, solid comedy. Because I was worried it would turn into an hour of us going, that's pretty good, right?
Yeah, that's pretty fun.
Well, we do always have fun with it, but I don't think we've ever done a setup punch album like this is. So this will be a real test for us. But if you haven't watched one of these before, just so you know, there's a good chance this is longer than the actual album itself, and it is just us going, this guy's pretty awesome, huh? So I'm warning you before you dive in. So
this guy's big for a reason, isn't he?
Don't complain about it later. That's what this is. It's just Rodney appreciation, straightforward. So we will get into that in a moment. But first, I want to tell you to go to blindmike.net. That's where all our links are. If you're watching this program on YouTube right now, please like, comment, subscribe, and know that you could have gotten it a week early on Patreon. Or if you're a YouTube member, you get all early access to all Why You Laughings, as well as other bonus content. And I'm going to strike a deal right here. I hope Craig obliges. What do you say? From now on, we put this podcast on Apple, Spotify, and all other audio platforms. Let's make a deal.
There was no excuse for the Robin episode. I just straight up forgot.
Do you agree? You're in.
Yeah.
This is going to be an Apple and Spotify podcast.
That's right.
All right, fantastic. Most people say, Mike, you don't need Apple or Spotify. Who uses those things?
Yeah.
And Craig's been like, we got to get it on those platforms. And I've said, Craig, don't you dare. And if you're going to do it, at least do it 3 days late so no one knows we've done an episode. But finally, Craig has won. He's bullied me into it. We're going to upload to Apple and Spotify on time here on out.
Yep.
You guys are probably listening to this in June.
So it's like I'm catching up. I'm listening to all of them.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a good lesson to go back through the archives, because we do get recommendations. Hey, why don't you do Andy Kaufman? Why don't you do Mel Brooks? We did. Go back through the archives, see if there's any episodes you've missed, and check out the old episodes.
I did have
blindmike.net as we can do that.
Someone come up to me this past weekend and say that they did go back and they're listening to all of these in order, which
good.
It's a tall task.
Well, it's important too, because the order was very meticulous. It wasn't just willy-nilly, whatever I felt like doing that week. You have to listen to them in order, and then you go, oh, I see what they did there. I see what they were doing.
You never go, fuck, what am I going to do next week?
They went from Carl Reiner into Opie versus Jim for a reason. It all makes such perfect sense to me now.
Yeah.
So consider doing that. Go back to the archives. blindmike.net. We appreciate you guys supporting this show. It helps more people find the program. So let's get into it, shall we? Rodney Dangerfield, No Respect, recorded at his comedy club. And like I said, great shout out to the Grammys for even nominating this because it feels almost like he's just fucking around, you know?
Yeah.
But
And it's not like The Day the Laughter Died. Complete opposite of
no, this is a man who is focused on material and nothing else, unlike Andrew Dice Clay. Let's get into it.
No respect at all. When I was a baby, I was breastfed by my father.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rodney.
Yes, this is my moment when fate took my hand. But once in a lifetime, I can't sing. What the hell am I singing for, huh? I'll be doing card tricks next, weather reports, whatever you want. But it's nice seeing some folks here doing from television, I'll tell you that. But one guy gave me a hard time. He kept looking at me and looking at me. He said, "What I know you from, you know?" I said, "You ever watch a Tonight Show, Johnny Carson?" He said, "Yeah, you too."
I love that intro for so many reasons. First of all, it's a little like sloppy. Like the music is playing over. People are just like kibitzing in the room. There's just chitter chatter going on. And so it's a little slide. The guy just goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, Rodney." Doesn't even fully introduce him. Yeah. And then what I think is so great about it is we've talked a lot on this program about there was a weird time where comedians didn't necessarily want to be comedians. They wanted to be actors. They wanted to be on Broadway. They wanted to be musicians, whatever. You got into stand-up almost as a backup. And there are like great stand-up. Red Fox, Don Rickles, and like these insult guys, or in Red Fox's case, like filthy guys that would start their comedy set with like a big song and dance number. And they were serious. And I thought that's what was about to happen because Rodney was, as we talked about in the full Rodney episode, he did start as a singing waiter, which is very funny to imagine. So I thought like, oh, Rodney's like performing. And then he's just kind of like making fun. He's like, what the fuck am I doing?
Didn't he go from a singing waiter to aluminum siding for houses?
Yes. Yeah. He did famously quit stand-up. That's how rough the business was back then. This brilliant man, had to quit stand-up to sell aluminum siding. But yeah, I really love that intro because of the way it's put together, and also it feels like you're out in 1980. Like you gotta put yourself based on that intro. And right out of the gate, I mean, that's Rodney's whole thing, but right out of the gate, shits on himself. Like mentions the Tonight Show, but like downplays it. It's not this sucking his own dick for being on Carson. It's almost like I don't deserve that, you know?
Yeah. Next we have Family.
Okay, let's get into it.
My old man, he was dumb too, my old man. He worked in a bank that caught him stealing pens. I tell you, I can't relax, you know? Well, the other night I felt like having a few drinks. I noted the bartender and said, "Surprise me." He showed me a naked picture of my wife. My wife had got no sex life either. She cut me down at once a month. No, I'm lucky. 2 guys I know she cut out completely.
So here's the thing about Rodney, and it's a little like we talked about with Seinfeld to a degree, but Rodney's jokes are so repeated. That's a lot of Rodney's jokes became essentially street jokes when you're like, well, we don't know who wrote these brilliant jokes. So Rodney's jokes became like that, where they're not even Rodney's anymore. They're just things people say. Yeah. But if you dissect it the way we are, the idea, like, my father's dumb. He went to a bank and stole pens. It's such a brilliant, like, it's really a smart joke. But when delivered through Rodney's voice, it just seems like something that's been around forever, like some dumb, obvious observation. But it really is hilarious. I told him to surprise me, so he showed me a picture of my wife naked. Like, it's very actually cerebral, but it's not presented in that way.
Next, we have Fortune Cookie.
This is another example of that. I think a lot of Rodney's jokes are there are a lot of Rodney's jokes that are like right there in front of you, and especially now, 45 years later, might seem a little corny. But what's amazing is he has these one-liners that still hold up today, and even almost a half century after he performed them, you're like, how the fuck did he come up with that?
What the hell? Nice to see the love in the room anyway. Man, there's too much hate in the world today. People always fight with each other. It's awful. The trouble with me is I'm too easygoing. Last night I had dinner in a Chinese restaurant. I opened my fortune cookie. Inside was a guy's check next to me. Your check. He said thanks.
It's such not the obvious reference. Like, the obvious thing would be to have the opposite of what you think written on the fortune cookie. The idea that the piece of paper is the guy's check next to you, I think, is just so brilliant. And he, like I said, a lot of these jokes have been redone and retold and reshaped and basically just stolen over the years, that they seem corny now. But there are some jokes in here, like that one, that you're like, no one's even really been able to touch that. Like Chris Rock would say that about Cosby. And I don't know that I totally agree with him on Cosby. Although when we did the Cosby episode, I understood his point a little more than I originally did.
On stage only.
Cosby's done some things off stage as well. It's a good man. But Chris Rock's point was, like, we all do Pryor. He's like, me, Eddie, Martin Lawrence, like, we all do a little Pryor. Like, no one's really able to do Cosby. A version of that is true with Rodney. A ton of people have done Rodney in different variations. But there are jokes where it's like no one's really able to touch that. You can't reshape it. You can't rip it off because it's perfect. The words he uses are perfect. It's like the DePaulo joke we talked about last week about Robin Quivers. It's like there's no way to change it or make it different or enhance it. It's done. It's perfect. I want to say one thing too before I forget. The great thing about Rodney too, and in a weird way, like Rodney, I think helped a lot of people's mental health, because the reason a lot of comics feel comfortable making fun of themselves and talking about the horrors of their life, like, you may not seem it on the surface, but like Jim Norton is obviously very influenced by Rodney, just the self-deprecation stuff. And like when he talks about his dad there, like he insults his father, but he makes it seem like he had a long relationship with his dad. He didn't know his dad really. Like he had a terrible relationship with his father, but he kind of shapes that into just making fun of some guy for the audience. It becomes a character,
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, where are we going?
Now we're going to darkness.
There's a lot of darkness in Rodney's act. I remember talking about this when we talked about his life, but it's amazing that this guy that is just set up punch, it seems very surface level. If you examine it at all, you see what a dark guy he is.
I wish I came to Midwest and I lived in a nice adjusted town. Really, it's really nice. I had a wooden frame house with a screen door in back of the kitchen. My brother and sister were Marianne and Biff. I had a fat maid named Annie. I walk her with a tennis racket, smack her in the ass. She goes, "Oh, that boy." And Dad worked for the bank for 30 years. Vice president, very adjusted man, Dad. Churchgoer, never smokes, drinks, or gambles. Then you read about these guys. One day they pick up an axe and wipe out the whole family, Well, the next day the cops come around. What happened here? What kind of man was he? He was a quiet man. Very quiet man.
That is something that I think comics do forget about. Like, we talked about Jeselnik, who Jeselnik in his most recent special talked about cancel culture, and he's like, "You're a comic, do your job." And there's an element of that we argued for weeks on the Blind Mike Project. But the core of what he's saying, I agree with, because I think comics have forgotten you do kind of have to shape things in order to get away with them. Like, if Rodney did that sloppily, then it's a grotesque joke making light of murder. You know what I mean? Right. But Rodney's a guy that he would have been able to do that on Carson if he wanted to, Right. Like the way he packaged them, and Rickles is like this too, where they could get very dark. Joan Rivers was like that in a way as well, where they could get very dark or nasty or insulting, but you almost don't recognize it. We kind of talked about that with Seinfeld, where Seinfeld had a great ability to mask what he was talking about in this sort of clean package. And Rodney might be the greatest ever at that, because if you watch, Norm would talk about this, that if you went to see Rodney live, and we'll get a little taste of it as this special goes on. But I guess there were times, and even in some of his albums, I think, where Rodney gets like filthy. Like he's telling really dirty jokes towards the end of his act.
Yeah.
But he knew how to package those for TV. And he's not a guy that bitched about censorship or anything. He was able to figure out a way to do his style of jokes for the audience he was playing to.
Next week, I'm talking about his sex life.
There was a big, let's see if Rodney had a masterful sex life. Let's see what that's about.
I bet this is bragging.
I'll tell you, my sex life is nothing anyway. You kidding? My sex life. My biggest thrill is self-inflicted hickeys. What a sex life. I told a girl from Allstate, what I want to put in your hands, you'll never sell me insurance. What a sex life. The only reason I get any girls at all is because of who I am, a rapist. I'm not a sexy guy. No, I'm not sexy. Well, this morning when I put on my underwear, I could hear the Fruit of Loom guys giggling. I'm a bad lover. You're kidding? Very bad lover. You know, I caught a peeping Tom booing me.
He tells a rape joke, a literal rape joke, and then goes right back into sort of like G-rated material. The Fruit of the Loom guys were giggling at me. And that's what's really amazing about Rodney, because now the Rodney impression is almost what you use for like a hack joke. Like, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Because he had such a style. I think that's true of any guys with that kind of invent a character like he had. And you could say Rodney was one note. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, but I get the stereotyping of it. But like, I gave myself self-inflicted hickeys. It's such a weird, obscure way to describe something that anyone that thinks Rodney is surface level just like didn't get it. You know,
he's so bad at sex that Peeping Tom was booing him.
He was booing me. He had a lot of, you could tell the tough crowd guy. I mentioned Norton a minute ago, but like the tough crowd guys in general.
Oh yeah,
that's self-deprecating, ball busting. Like, you know, the majority of Rodney's material might not be as dirty as a lot of those guys were, but Rodney and Rickles shaped that Comedy Cellar table in a way that, not directly, like they don't even know who those guys are, but like in a weird way, that is where a lot of that came from, is Rodney and Rickles style ball busting and self-deprecating humor.
Next week I'm talking about doctors.
Oh, well, okay.
He's gonna love them.
There is, like, that's the thing. What we're doing right now is kind of mocking Rodney's, where we're like, oh, I wonder if this is, but that's the genius of it. And that's the fine line that I talk about, where it would be very easy for Rodney to become a hack, because he is basically playing a character that is one note in a way. And in someone else's hands, it would have become stale eventually. But Rodney had such a charm to him and such a unique ability and just great joke writing ability that it never got stuck. And Rodney might debunk my Mitch Hedberg theory. Although, to be fair, Rodney didn't get famous till he was 50, as you mentioned. But my Mitch Hedberg theory is that if Mitch Hedberg lived, he wouldn't be seen as the genius he is. He'd be seen as Dimitri Martin, where you're like, oh, that guy had some good stuff, and then you kind of forget about him, you know?
Yeah.
I don't mean that as an insult either. I think Dimitri Martin is funny, and I think Mitch Hedberg is great. But I think if Mitch Hedberg stuck around for a lot of years, you'd figure out the formula. Well, and I think Rodney's an example of that not necessarily being true, because I can watch Rodney Tonight Show clips now and still laugh my ass off.
Have you ever seen the video of Mitch Hedberg absolutely bombing at his Comedy Central Presents?
Yes. Yeah.
So it kind of happened before he died.
Well, that's a lot of Mitch just being fucked up, you know?
It was, but then he went to his old material and started killing.
Right. Right.
It's kind of like it almost happened to him in one night.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my trouble. I got the wrong doctor. You know my doctor, Dr. Vinny Boombatch. That's my doctor. Oh, that doctor forgot weird.
Pause real quick. That's something Eddie Murphy was good at too, where like they had characters in their act.
Right.
That you don't see ever, really. I mean, maybe like someone talking about their kids, or like Chad Daniels talks about his son, and people like kind of know who that is now. But you never hear just like a fictional character where he goes, you know, my doctor, Vinny Boombatch, and everyone's like, yeah, he's talking about him. We know him.
Give me his number.
Doc, every day I wake up, I look in the mirror, I want to throw up. What's wrong with me? He said, I don't know, but your eyesight is perfect. Once I called him, I swallowed a bottle of sleeping pills. He told me to have a few drinks and get some rest. He's a strange doctor, you know. No matter where it hurts you, he wants to kiss it, make it better. Well, after he checked me for a hernia, I had to change my phone number. He didn't help me lose weight either. He told me to run 5 miles a day for 2 weeks. I called him up. I said, Doc, I'm 70 miles from my house. This table can't multiply either. You got to multiply over here, okay? My dentist, too, that's another one. I told him my teeth are all getting yellow. He told me to wear a brown necktie. Well, I'll tell you, I never had any luck with doctors. I found out my proctologist, he used to work for Roto-Rooter. I wish everyone knew what a proctologist was. Be a hell of a joke, you know? You never heard of Roto-Rooter, right? I'll tell you, last year was a rough week. My psychiatrist told me I'm going crazy. I said to him, if you don't mind, I'd like a second opinion. He said, all right, you're ugly too.
There's some in there, like that last one that we heard. Like, those just become things people say. You know what I mean? Like, that's how smart and funny they were at the time, that now you're like, you like roll your eyes if someone says it. It's like, I always say about Anchorman and movies like that. Caddyshack is like this too, where they were such funny movies that people that aren't funny adopted that as a personality. Steve Martin's a guy like that. Rodney's a guy like that. There are a few guys where like just human beings will steal their jokes just at dinner parties, and you'll say Rodney things and you just get away with it because they're funny enough and broad enough that people are like, oh, that's not bad. And then, you know, privately, you're like, this guy's a fucking asshole. But, you know.
Piece of shit.
Yeah.
But here he is talking about how ugly he is.
Oh, Rodney. Stop beating yourself up.
You're not so bad.
You can I know I'm ugly? I stuck my head out the window, got arrested for mooning. I was an ugly kid, too. I worked in a pet store. People kept asking how big I'd get. I wanted to try to make me a poster boy for birth control. What a childhood I had. My mother never breastfed me. She told me she liked me as a friend. My mother had morning sickness after I was born. My old man, he didn't like my looks either. He carried around a picture of the kid who came with the wallet.
Another thing about this is, like, it's only 41 minutes, so shorter than, like, your typical special or album, I guess. But what's amazing about guys like Rodney is listen to the amount of jokes that were in that, 30-second clip?
15.
Yeah, like, in 40, he had to write in 41 minutes, he probably has 85 jokes. I should have counted them. But there's probably 80 some odd jokes, maybe more. Like, maybe I'm doing my math wrong. Maybe 120 or something like that. Like, the amount of jokes per minute is unprecedented. Usually there would be some kind of setup to explain who Vinny Boombatch is or something that takes away. Rodney, it doesn't matter, like, where he's going. You just know. And unfortunately for Rodney, he probably was odd looking enough that the crowd is like, he's right. He is fucking ugly.
You are disgusting.
But Rodney's able to make that into material where I do think there are a lot of comics that almost try to convince you they're not ugly in their jokes. You know what I mean? Like, almost make you feel like they use self-deprecating humor, but they don't go in 100%. where Rodney was just like, "Ain't I an ugly bastard?"
All right, gross. Next we have the best part of the show, the gay jokes.
Well, this is ahead of his time because Rodney treated it like it was not as taboo a subject. But I was just talking about something yesterday on Who Are These Socials? I forget what it was, but I told some story that made me remember, like, in my lifetime, I have cognitive memory of gay marriage being like a real hot button issue.
Yeah.
And if you go back and look at stuff from like the early 2000s, the way they talked about like gay lifestyle is so different than it is now. So to do this in 1980, just very matter of factly, Rodney was way ahead of his time on this.
Teasing it, you know. I got a cousin who's gay. I always kid him. I tell him in the family tree he's in the fruit section, you know. My cousin went to London. He was so disappointed. He found out Big Ben was a clock. Oh, I knew my cousin was strange in high school. Other kids were dissecting frogs. He was opening flies. What, do you want to fight now?
You see, it's like they're pulling back on him.
I know.
Are you kidding? Being gay can happen to anyone. You kidding? It can happen to you. It can happen to you. Oh, it did happen to you. Hi there. You're a good sport, so you're all right. You're okay. But it's good to see you back in men's clothes again, I'll tell you that.
It is like you can tell the audience is like, whoa, Rodney, easy. We agree you're ugly, but let's not talk about this stuff.
Remember how hard they laughed at him saying, "I am a rapist"?
Yes, that's a great point. Yeah, he said he's a rapist, and they're like, "Oh my God, sexual assault!" Whoa, two men with each other. But the way, and I'm not saying those are the best jokes of all time. I think they're, they've aged poorly in the sense that you've heard shit like that a million times now. But at the time, not only was it cutting edge, but the way Rodney was delivering it, like you couldn't talk about that on TV, probably. The way I said, like, Rodney would be able to do this stuff on The Tonight Show, they might have a problem with him just matter-of-factly talking about gay people on The Tonight Show at that time. Because it was such a taboo subject, as you hear by the audience there. But the way he's talking about it, that would be viewed as, if you did some college paper on it, you'd have to talk about how it was toxic. But I view that stuff as very progressive because he's talking about gay people the way he talks about literally any other subject on this special.
Next, we have him talking about drugs.
All right. Rodney definitely dabbled late in life, as we will hear more about later. But yeah, Rodney was a big drug guy.
What can I tell you? It's tough to be funny when you're coming off drugs, I'll tell you that.
As long as you're talking about being gay.
Just once. I don't know what I was doing. I was on cocaine. When you're on cocaine, you don't know what you're doing. I was in a restaurant. I tried to snort the sugar off my cornflakes. And kids today, they're into cocaine. Ooh, kids today, they don't want to read about Snow White. They want to shove it up their nose. I tried marijuana. I got too hungry. Ooh, was I hungry? I was so hungry, I smoked a half a joint and I ate the other half. I was starving, Sometimes you turn to drugs, the pressure of life reaches you, And my life is nothing but pressure, all pressure. And this pressure is like a heaviness. And it's always on top of me, this heaviness, always there since I'm a kid. Other people wake up in the morning, new day, up and at 'em. I wake up, the heaviness is waiting for me nice. And sometimes I even talk to it. And I say, "Hi, heaviness." And the heaviness looks back at me today. You're going to get it good, You'll be drinking early today. And I don't want to drink. I'm a bad drinker. When I drink the next day, I got to do two things. I try and locate my car, and I got to bring back the car I took. I'm a bad drinker. Bad drinker. You know you're drunk when you take a leak and your fly isn't open. I'll tell you that.
If I told you I heard Patrice in there, would you know what line I was talking about?
No.
When he says, "Hi, heaviness," I think, "Good morning, grizzly bears."
Yes. Exactly.
A little Chappelle, too. I could hear Chappelle in there also. But good morning, grizzly bears. But yeah, it's funny how much Rodney talks about stuff that affected his life, but you don't know that. It's not a woe is me, look at what I've overcome type of thing. You don't even think he's serious, but he has dealt with drugs. He has dealt with women rejecting him, a father, both parents that he didn't have a good relationship with. Like, he dealt with all these things, and that's where these jokes come from. But if you're watching it, you're like, how's this guy come up with this shit? You know, you think he has no ailments because he seems like such a happy guy when really he was miserably depressed at all time. And that's the only reason we're getting this brilliance is because of how much he hated himself.
Next, we have fun reaction.
Okay, yeah, let's hear this.
I like the game. I'm not gonna lose a few bucks. I'm doing okay today. What the heck? As a kid, I had nothing. I was poor, really poor. I was so poor, my rich aunt died in a will. I owed her $20. I was poor. I wore my father's hand-me-downs. It was rough. I had to unzip my fly to blow my nose. We were poor. In our Christmas tree, we had no tinsel. We used to wait for Grandpa to sneeze. Now it's a funny line. Don't give me that bullshit, all right? I've been through enough of my life.
I remember we talked about Seinfeld a few weeks ago, and I said when he said, I forget if it was hell or damn or goddamn, I remember being like, as a kid, I was like, Sherry? When you hear Rodney say, don't give me that bullshit, you're like, yes, there it is. There was something so naughty about hearing these guys curse. I would have to say, Brian Regan is in a show called Louder Milk.
Yeah.
And he plays a character that's just a drunk. It's about like an AA group. And Brian Regan plays a much different character than he is on stage. And there's something, it feels so naughty when you're watching these clean guys. You feel like you're getting, it's representative of a nicer time because now we just have access to any filth you can imagine on the internet. There is something nice about feeling like we're not supposed to hear this stuff. Like, I don't like what YouTube does with encouraging shows to bleep curse words and all this stuff. Like, we all on podcasts act like we're on network TV by bleeping everything. I don't love that, but there is something nice about not expecting a curse word and then you're like, ooh, Rodney said bullshit.
Next, I'm talking about kids.
One more thing about Rodney's crowd work. There is a lot of that where, like, now that's a lot of what people are like. You know, people like Matt Rife are known purely on crowd work. Rodney did crowd work the way it was supposed to, where he would briefly interact with them in snippets. You'll hear a little more later. But he would say, like, don't give me that bullshit, and this table doesn't know how to multiply, but then move on. They were, like, kind of standard things, ways he would interact with the crowd, but it was never the focus of his act, really.
His whole act almost feels like, not obviously it's not crowd work, but it almost feels like he's walking around the place talking directly to people.
Well, if you just showed someone Rodney now, you'd be like, oh, this guy was a TikTok comedian.
Yeah.
He built his act around being on TikTok. It's weird because Rodney seems so old school, but essentially what every comedian on Instagram and TikTok are trying to do is have a clip like Rodney would have had a million of.
Right.
I don't know. With kids today, it's different. They got it too good. They don't appreciate it either. Last Christmas, my kid wanted a BB gun. I gave him a BB gun. He gave me a sweatshirt with a bullseye on the back. What a smart kid I got. The other day, I told him about the birds and the bees. He told me about my wife and a butcher. The kid, he drives me nuts. Well, he put crazy glue in my preparation H. I mean, I got a real mean kid. Well, he scotch tapes worms to the sidewalk, then watches the birds get hernias. My daughter, too, she's no bargain either. In public school, she was voted most likely to conceive. So they play around so young. Who they play around too young? You know what? Today they got birth control pills shaped like Fred Flintstone. Well, you talk to some kids, they're afraid to have sex. They're scared. I mean, the first time I had sex, I was scared the first time. Who was I scared? I was all alone.
I'd love to know how he figured out. If there's a great interview where Rodney explains how he crafted his jokes, I don't know that there is because people didn't interview in that way back then. I wish Rodney did Marin. God damn it. It's a shame he didn't live long enough. But if there's anywhere where Rodney describes how he like wrote his jokes, I'd love to know how he attributed different characteristics to different people. Because those jokes about his son easily could have been, my wife gave me a shirt with a bullseye in the back. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder how he figured out who to attribute to what so that one particular topic didn't get stale. Because it is more unique and original to make it that his kid is an asshole, especially in 1980. That's very different and weird. And I'd love to know how he figured that out.
My daughter's voted most likely to conceive is tough.
Right. And here's the thing. The easier joke and what seems like the more palatable joke would be to say that about his wife.
Right.
So it's just funnier to put it on his daughter, but I think a lot of people wouldn't do that because they'd be like, oh, the crowd would pull back. But Rodney has such a delivery that you're on board. You don't realize he's saying something so disgusting.
No, the only thing that makes this crowd reel back is when you say, like, two men kissing. They're like, oh.
No, that's enough, Rodney.
Relax.
That's the one thing. The rest of this stuff, we're not even paying attention. We're laughing so hard. But
don't go with that bullshit.
That's when our ears perk up.
This is crowd work, actual crowd work.
Okay, so let's hear. This is, I think, about the limit of how crowd work is supposed to be done. I don't know that people were ever meant to interview someone about where they work and how long they've been with their spouse. I think this is probably the extent of how it was always meant to be handled.
I mean, nothing works. Last night a hooker told me she had a headache. You don't know what a hooker is either, huh? You girls over here, you know what a hooker is? Oh, you are hookers. Oh, good luck. I'm just kidding, joshing around. Are you? God, and you, sir, take a hand off your pee-pee. You go blind that way. That's why you're not laughing. You're too busy down there. I can say hooker and pee-pee. I'm not on television. It's a nightclub. You can say whatever you want here. This son of a bitch, bullshit bastard. I don't know. What the hell am I sweating for? It's my joint. I got the job. I don't know what I'm doing here. You know that? It's just a hobby. That's all a hobby. I work here for laughs, you know. I make my money in my regular job. I sing the national anthem at cockfights.
I think that's such a weird reference. You know what I mean? Like, we talked about it already, but for his mind to come, I sing the national anthem at cockfights. It's such an obscure, like, why did his mind even go there? So it is much funnier, like much more obscure than Rodney seems on the surface. But like the crowd work stuff, that evolved to, for social media, people want the reaction of talking to those. You're not a hooker? Seriously, what do you do for work? Oh, you're in sales. What do you sell? It's like, well, what the fuck are we doing? I'm part of the show now. Why is that? And then people also get mad when people talk and heckle. But it's like, you're putting up clips where you're like, hey guys, want to come be part of the show?
You're inviting it.
Yeah. And I think that's a weird thing, and that's why audiences have never respected stand-up the way they do. Rodney has, I won't ruin it because I think it's in one of the clips later. But Rodney has a great line that's probably been repeated a million times, but is the exact reason you don't give the crowd too much rope as far as interaction. So I thought his level of dealing with the crowd there was what it should be. And also it's very funny to hear him say that pee-pee was a dirty word.
Yeah.
I could say pee-pee. I'm not on television.
I'm not on TV. I can say son of a bitch.
We can say it all now, Rod.
I did enjoy people acknowledge they sweat a lot, but that was like my favorite maybe ever. He's just like, I got the job. What am I doing?
That's great. Yeah. And now, if he was around 30 years later, Rodney'd be taking his shirt off on stage and closing with the same story everywhere he goes.
Like a Russian mob story.
Hey, I sold aluminum siding when I was 43 years old. Here's how it happened.
Here he's talking about dating.
I can't make it with chicks. You go out with night, you're going to start conversations. Hi, where you from? Really? What sign are you? I can't do it. To me, the 8 hours of bullshit ain't worth the 8 seconds. I can't make the whole trip. I think. I'll tell you what's tough. You spend a whole night with a chicken and daylight comes and you didn't.
Hey.
That's where is thy sting? I don't know. I'm glad like that, girls. I was making love to one girl. She started to cry. I said to her, "You'll hate yourself in the morning." She said, "No, I hate myself now." This girl was no bargain either. Showed up, she had pigtails under her arms. And she was fat too. She got in a scale. A card came out and said, "1 at a time." This girl was fat and ugly. Ooh, she ugly. How ugly? She was known as a two-bagger. And that girl who's so ugly, go out with her, you put a bag over your head in case the bag over her head breaks. She was ugly. She was so ugly, look at a dictionary under the word ugly, you see her picture. I mean, ugly.
Is that where it started?
No,
Maybe.
Her cat was the hair in her legs. It's an ugly chick. I took her to the top of the Empire State Building. Airplanes started to attack her. I mean, ugly. I found out when she goes to the bank, they turn off the cameras. You kidding?
He has a lot of good bank material.
I know.
He must have spent a lot of time at the bank.
He's really cornered that market.
But I'm glad you said that too, because I wonder that often when we watch older stuff like this, when I hear him say, "You look up ugly in the dictionary, it's her picture." Did it start there, or was Rodney telling a joke that was already hack? You know?
Yeah.
I wonder about that because I don't know a way to find an actual answer to that. But I am curious, like, do these guys start stuff like this? Which I wouldn't be surprised if that came from Rodney. I just don't have a way to verify it, really.
It would make sense.
It would. It feels like a Rodney thing.
Yeah, it's a Rodney thing for sure.
Well, you know what? We're saying it, even if it's not true.
Rodney started it.
But that is the brilliance of Rodney is like, you know, he says coming and everyone pulls back. They're like, oh. And he's like, I'll tell you what will get you guys back. Ain't I fucking ugly? Ain't I a beast?
Yeah, you are.
And there's also, this is what real talent is being able to overcome things that no one else could get away with. Like if Joe Matarese had a chunk where he talks about being married, and then 15 minutes later he goes, "Man, I have trouble dating," would be like, the fuck are you talking about? You just said you were married. What do you mean? But Rodney can do that, and just the jokes are so good and in rapid succession that you don't even really notice that certain things don't quite line up with what he's saying.
Next, we have time about getting older.
Yes. So it's amazing it took us this long to get into Rodney impressions.
I like almost did that by accident. I was like consciously like, don't do it.
Drugs here, perhaps. You get older, you look for ways to relax. You know, doctors tell you don't smoke, don't drink, eat certain foods. At my age, what can I look forward to? But from this point on, if I take excellent care of myself, I'll get very sick and die. What am I doing? I should be home in slippers, relaxing, creating hatred in the family. My age, I should be reading the papers. I'm looking to roll. You know when you're really old? When your family talks about you in front of you. Ever see those families? The guy's sitting right there. What do you want to do with Pop? I mean, Pop can't stay here. And Pop just sits there dribbling. Now, Harry, put Pop in the garage. We got company coming, okay? That's when you're old. I'm glad you got a sense of humor. This world is too much. You got to have a laugh once in a while. That's why the Polish people are okay. Got a sense of humor, do jokes, they kid around, they're all right. What's that? You go to the movies. You talk back to the screen. Take it easy, will you? Oh, now, you want to save your breath. You need it later to blow up your inflatable date.
That's what I was talking about earlier. Do you go to the movie theaters and talk to the screen? Because it is like Rodney's built it in that he interacts with the crowd technically, but you should know your role. Whereas now those lines are blurred because of all the social media clips. But that the getting older joke where you talk about Pop right in front of him, like that's such a brilliant joke that if Nate Bargatze did that now, I would find it brilliant. You know what I mean? Like if someone did that it feels like a Nate joke. That's why I used him. But if someone did that 45 years later, you'd be like, that's amazing. That's hilarious. But Nate would turn that into a 6-minute story about his grandfather or something. Whereas Rodney, it's like one of 75 lines like that. And that's what's truly incredible about this. I don't know that there's anyone, even like Mark Normand, who is kind of a one-line guy. And Jeselnik's pace is so slow that I don't think he fits. I don't know that there's anyone that has even attempts the amount of punchlines that Rodney's packing into this thing.
Next this is more crowd work, but it's a different way. He's taking questions.
Oh yeah, so this is like Sam Morril and Mark Normand do this now, and they do it for social media. But this is what I'm talking about. And that last clip was representative of it too, where Rodney slows down. And there's something like very romantic about it, where you hear the ice clinking in people's glasses, and he's talking a little slower, and you have that old like album feel where there's kind of white noise that you're hearing. Like there's a romantic, 80s nightclub feel to the album that I loved. And this taking questions thing is kind of that too, where this is what I was talking about at the beginning, where I was surprised it won the Grammy, because it's kind of a sloppy album in a way.
So brilliant about it.
You know what I mean? That is what's great about it, where 35 minutes in or whatever it is, Rodney's like, all right, you got anything for me?
Or maybe that's the reason like composers started winning best comedy album. People like,
maybe.
Can't do this.
They have to look classy, yeah.
But here's taking questions.
Okay.
Anybody got a question here, perhaps? How's my health? My health is very bad, very bad. You're kidding. This morning I fixed myself pretty good too. This morning, my push-ups in the nude. I didn't see the mousetrap. You have a question here, so yes. Did my mother have any kids that lived? You're hot shit too, you know that?
The audience, and I'm like, credit to Rodney for welcoming it, because I think most people would be pretty fucking annoying. But the audience is trying to be Rodney.
Yeah.
And that's what's amazing at this time, especially when comedy wasn't as big. I know like being on the Tonight Show and stuff was huge, but now people like through podcasting, it feels like you have a relationship with the comics you like you know a lot about them. Whereas back then, it's pretty impressive to build up a fan base that's like, I'm going to try and throw a Rodney joke at Rodney and see what he does with it.
I'm gonna laugh. You have a question, sir? What do I do for a living? That's nice, sir. I get guys for your sister, okay? Go with some wise guy. He's a wise guy able to show you and I go to a men's room and have it out together. And show you how small you are. Now on, I want questions only from people. Yes, my dear, you have a question. I'm lucky if I can find it in the morning. You kidding? Told you I'm getting old. At my age, I'm envious of a stiff wind. Any other questions here, perhaps?
Hey, Rodney,
yes.
I'll give you a kiss if you give me your tie.
You'll give me a kiss for giving my tie. That's not a bad offer.
Take it.
What do I get for my shorts? Yes, right back there. I was born in Babylon, Long Island. You hear that place? Very small little town, very small town. So small the local hooker was a virgin. Very small place. One day I plugged in my electric razor and a trolley stopped. Yes, sir. Johnny Carson's a great guy. He really is. Ed McMahon is gay, though, you know.
Just for no reason. A shot at Ed McMahon. But you never saw that in albums back then. A guy just kind of like, all right, let's fuck around for the last 10 minutes. You know, like that. Now it's very common because people are so starved for content. Like I said, Morril and Normand do it, I think, like at every live show they do, more or less. And that is more like someone says, hey, talk about Elon Musk, you know, like talk about something in the news. So they will kind of have prepared things. Rodney just has, and a lot of these are prepared, to be fair, but a lot of these are just comebacks to things like people are looking for Rodney to insult them essentially, or insult himself. And so to include that in a Grammy Award winning album, I think is pretty ballsy. And it is like, this is Rodney's signature album. The fact that it's called No Respect, his catchphrase, like this is his, if you're thinking of Rodney material, it is this album. So for him to include basically a segment like this is pretty unique and interesting.
Next, we're at the closer.
It's a long one, but yeah, we this it caught up to us quickly. I left the last few minutes, and this is what's amazing about this album is, you know what it reminded me of? And this guy loved Rodney. Norm at the end of me doing stand-up. Someone just yells out O.J. Simpson. And he has like 5 minutes on OJ. Now, I'm sure he did that material somewhere else. But like the odds of that person yelling out O.J. Simpson and Norm being like, okay, this is how I'll close the album.
Yeah, the guy stole some shirts and got 8 consecutive life sentences.
Yeah, he just has great OJ jokes. But this is
special.
It's an amazing one, and as is this, because I found this to be like just a interesting way of ending the album. And like I said, it gives a very cool and unique feel to this, which I think for someone like Rodney, you don't expect uniqueness, if that makes sense. Not that the jokes aren't unique, but you're like, oh, it's pretty traditional stand-up. It's a guy in a rumpled suit giving set-up punchlines. So for him to have something so unique in his album, I found admirable.
That's it, folks. The end of the line. Go ahead, one more.
Where'd you get a name like Rodney?
Where'd I get a name like Rodney? My real name is Percival Sweetwater. Now, what happened was I went back into show business, you know. I was out of it for a while. I quit. Give you an idea how well I was doing at the time I quit. I was the only one who knew I quit. And I saw an ad in the paper, and I came back and said, improve your personality. And I went to see the man. He told me my personality was okay, but my name was my problem. I said to him, my name? How can a name be a problem? Even William Shakespeare said, what's in a name? He said, who? I said, William Shakespeare. He said, look, well, listen to me, or listen to your friends.
Pause real quick. You thought, especially by his tone, you thought like, oh shit, we're going to get a real Rodney story. And that is kind of close, that a club owner told him to go with Rodney Dangerfield. And then I forget the exact story. We talked about it in our first Rodney episode. But years later, Rodney realized the guy stole that name from someone else.
Yeah.
But like you think like, oh, we're going to get a real Rodney story. And he just has a joke prepared for it. You're like, ah, fuck. He got me again.
You know the trouble with me? I'll tell you the trouble with me. I appeal to everyone who can do me absolutely no good. With me, nothing comes easy. Well, the other day I went into Macdonald's. They told me I don't deserve a break. That's the story of my life. No respect. I don't get no respect at all. You get no respect from anyone. It's not easy. Not easy. No respect at all. Well, yesterday for 2 hours, a guy followed me with a pooper scooper. You're kidding. Well, I held a seashell to my ear and told me to get off the beach. I don't get no respect from anyone. I bought some rat poison. The girl asked me, should I wrap it up? You're going to eat it here. You're kidding. It's not easy being me. I was arrested for jaywalking. The crowd kept yelling, don't take him alive! But I do want to acknowledge the boys behind me. The trio, they're just working together during the winter. In the spring, they're going to break up and join smaller outfits. They've been with me now for 22 years, my boys, traveling around honky towns all over the country. Over here we have my pianist.
Pause real quick. I just loved hearing this. There's something so cool about like hearing Rodney with the band behind him, just like an old school nightclub act. It gives me chills to re-listen to, because I wish, I don't know who would be able to pull it off, but I wish someone did kind of this style of old school album now. I'll try and think of a name while we listen to the rest of Rodney here, but it would be nice if we heard like another album like this, because it's a time gone by.
Poser and friend Singe. And that's Buzz. He's on drums, among other things.
Oh, Stanhope did it. I forgot.
Yeah.
I forgot Stanhope did this. Sorry. He literally he's in a Rodney type suit. He has Henry Phillips playing music in the background. So maybe that's what I'm thinking of. I'm like, boy, I'd really love if someone did this.
That's just helping my case against Stanhope.
Yeah.
And right behind me is my new bass man, Styles Bitchley. And Lionel, he's outside painting a bus. And this is Sonia. She don't sing, she just travels with us, that's all. Yeah, I tell you, the government's after me, back taxes. Marlena's after me, back alimony, but I'm happy, I'm using vibes again. It's too hip, too hip. Inside stuff, that's all. What do you want to do now? That's it, show's over. You got screwed again, right? What can I tell you? Huh? Money back fungo, all right, that's it, you got screwed, okay? Well, I'll tell you, the whole thing goes back to my childhood. And the time I was lost on a beach and a cop came and looked for my parents. I said to the cop, I think we'll find them. He said, I don't know, kid, there's so many places they could hide. I was never lucky in the beach, never. I was drowning, I was yelling, help, help, and the lifeguard ran over. I said, all right, kid, keep it down, keep it down. My old man, he didn't help either, my old man. I was kidnapped. They sent back a piece of my finger. He said he wanted more proof. The time I asked my old man, how can I get my kite in the air? He told me to run off a cliff. What a childhood I had. My uncle's dying wish, he wanted me on his lap. He was in the electric chair. I hope you had a few laughs, okay? Watch out. Hey, good fun, hey. This was my moment. History called me big finish, big finish. Big times. Thank you so much. Hope you had some fun. Thank you very much.
I can't get that Stanhope album out of my. We might have to do that next, as far as album or specials, because now that's stuck in my head. How much I like that type of setting. It's just it's nostalgic. There's a nice feel to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was it. That was Rodney Dangerfield's No Respect, one of the greatest comedy albums of all time. A very different feel than maybe you'd expect Rodney to have. So I love that album, and I wanted to talk about it with you guys. So let me know any comments, anything you think I didn't discuss that I should have, any feedback you guys have on future albums and things like that. Let me know in the comments. But we will end. I figured Norm talked a lot about Rodney throughout his career, and I just thought this particular clip was very fitting for the stand-up, to follow the stand-up that we just listened to. So this is Norm telling a story about meeting Rodney. He's on the Stern Show telling this story, but he's talking about meeting Rodney at SNL.
He came and did, when I did Update, he came and did some jokes on his 75th birthday. So we have to do dress first at 8:30 and then at 11:30 the show, Right. So he comes and he's like, hey, Norm, I got to fucking talk to you, So I go in and I'm like, Mr. Dangerfield, it's great to meet you. That's the first time I ever met him. He goes, listen, man. He goes, what the fuck, man? Why am I doing it at 8:30? It's just, I know my fucking jokes. I'll just come back at 11:30. I go, I don't know how it works, Rodney. You got to do it. He goes, God damn. He goes, let me tell you something, kid. This was his advice to me. Kid. He goes, let me tell you something, kid. He goes, this fucking TV shit, He goes, this waiting around all the fucking time. It's a bunch of shit. It's shit. He goes, it's the same with fucking movies, You're in the movie and then you're in the fucking trailer all the time. That's all you're doing, is fucking jerking off in the trailer, He goes, it's all shit, kid. He goes, remember this and remember it forever. Stand up, man. That's all there is. Stand up. And he meant it. Then there's a fucking 5-minute pause. He's looking me right in the eyes. He goes, stand up, shit.
It's all shit. I thought that was such a great thing to follow that, as I said, very nice trip down nostalgia lane with Rodney, because it's so representative of how you hear so many stand-ups now where they're like, man, stand-up's the only thing. And then in another instance, you'll hear them just trash the idea of stand-up. It is their ultimate undoing, and the reason they're successful, and we know who they are, is their self-loathing. And maybe the best representation of that was Rodney Dangerfield. So hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Feel free to suggest any future episodes in the comments. You can also become a member on Patreon or YouTube if you want to get these episodes a week early. And new feature, get ready, gang. Apple and Spotify every week. Whenever you expect it to be on Apple and Spotify, by hook or by crook, it will be. That's Craig's guarantee. I fought him on this, and he said, Mike, the people need it. And I said, well, all right, if you're sure.
I went with the leave them wanting more, you know?
Yeah. So blindmike.net is where you can get all those links. We appreciate you guys supporting the show. Verygoodshow.org is where you can support Craig. If you want to thank Craig for fighting for you guys saying podcasts need to be on Spotify, damn it, then go to verygoodshow.org, throw Craig a thank you, and check out what he's doing there. Anything else people should know?
Nothing.
What a pro. All right, gang. We will talk to you next time on Why Are You Laughing?
Zip it up and zip it out.